Hi, I'm Aadeel Akhtar, founder of Psyonic, and you're listening to Gut Talks, double G-U-T-T.
Thank you for listening, and make sure you subscribe, like, and leave a comment. And don't forget to watch the full episode. Thanks again for listening to Gut Talks. I wanted to ask, beyond the nonprofit that you're gonna be setting up, is there kind of a sustainable business model or program or a social innovation program within the company to give access to those people, not just through donations?
Yeah, and so we're working on that, and so there's some ways we can do that by reducing the cost that it takes to make our hand. And I mean, we've been we're always flexible with the kind of business models we're doing and what might work in the future. And so it could be something in the future like for every sale that's made here, then it subsidizes the cost of one overseas. So kind of like a Tom's shoes.
Tom's shoes, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, like a model like that. And those are things that we've always considered. We first have to get our CE marking before we can go overseas. So that's our first priority while we kind of think through these different models that we're working on. And then, you know, there's like maybe a light version of the hand that has that's even more cost effective to make. So that's a potential option as well. The only thing is on that front is that we want to make sure that everyone has access to the best available technology. And we don't want to, I mean, because the people in developing nations are the ones who need it the most, right? And if they don't have access to, you know, the best technology out there, that always puts them at a disadvantage. So we want to be able to get them the access to the latest and best technologies as well. And so we're partnering with other organizations too. One is called the Range of Motion Project, and that's kind of one of the how we got our start as Psyonic too. We went down to Ecuador in 2014, and we had a 3D printed hand that was 3 times the size of a normal human hand, and wires going everywhere, plugged into breadboards, plugged into the wall, etc. And our patient, he had lost his left hand 35 years prior due to a war between Ecuador and Peru. And they had, and he had actually been able to make a pinch for the first time in 35 years with his left hand. And that moment was when we realized that, you know, we wanted to make everyone feel that exact same way. Everyone deserves this kind of technology, right? So partnering with organizations like the Range of Motion Project, they can give us access to resources in those countries, and like, you know, talk to the governments and helping subsidize the cost of the hand in those areas. And so there's a lot of different strategies we can take here, and that's kind of the exciting thing, right? To figure out what actually works in all of these situations.
Yeah, it's very challenging because beyond, you know, just finding the people, giving access, resources and accessibility, as you were saying, but also infrastructure. So if it's constantly connected to the cloud and so on, there are already challenges with regards to education. And in this case, yeah, how to keep this arm working all the time if they don't have this access. So hopefully, yeah, this can take off. But as you said, I think each country will be different also and be a challenge of its own, especially in remote areas.
Like I said, that's part of the thing that makes this so exciting, right? Is figuring out those challenges.
So just also another parenthesis, you've been all over the place, social media, you know, media covering you all the time, covering what you guys are working on. And this is how, you know, I came across you and Psyonic, basically. How are you coping with this?
So, you know, this has been, you know, kind of something we've been building towards for like the last like 6-7 years to kind of finally get this to the level that we wanted to be in and really make a huge splash worldwide with the kind of technology that's out there right now. So we're actually really excited to, you know, get this in front of as many people who can use it as possible. So it's been really a blessing that we've been getting a lot of coverage, and we're excited for the next, like, you know, 6 months to get even more coverage worldwide for a lot of the stuff that we're doing.
Okay, cool. And Let's go back a little bit to the lab. It took
Yeah,
you like
yeah,
9 iterations or something like that, right? To
yeah.
get the product where it is today. What were the challenges you went through, like from taking it from the lab uh, out there?
Yeah, and so you know what? I actually have. Let me grab this here real quick. This is the very first hand that we had ever made, right over here, and you can see there's quite a bit of
Yeah.
a difference, right, between this guy on the left and like this hand that I have on the right. And so this was fully 3D printed. It was based off an open source humanoid robot made by a French designer. And it was called the InMove humanoid robot. And we modified it so it was just the arm, and then we controlled it with our muscles. But so when we first set out to do this, we were fully 3D printing everything. But you can see this is super fragile, right? You give this to any user of a prosthetic hand, and they're going to break it within minutes of them using it. And so that was one of the biggest challenges that we had faced, was that how could we make a hand that was still very low cost, but more robust than the really expensive hands that are out there that are injection molded and custom machined and all of that. And so coming from a research background, so this was all happening while I was doing my PhD in neuroscience at the University of Illinois. And we looked to the literature, the research out there, and to see what was available. And there was a growing community for soft robotics. So these were robots that weren't made with traditional like rigid materials, but soft materials that are like your own body. So like silicone and rubber. And so what we learned was that instead of 3D printing the fingers, what we could do is we could 3D print molds and then inject low-cost silicone and rubber into those molds. And that's what makes our fingers flexible and compliant, like a natural hand is. And by doing that, we were actually able to make our hand more robust than a lot of the other hands that are out there, but also manufacture it at a lower cost than using injection molded materials. And so those are a lot of the challenges that we face. Like, how could we, given our constraints on our budget, how could we still make something that was better than everything else?
So are you manufacturing in the US at the moment?
Yes. So in our offices in this building is
Oh, in
where
your
we
offices.
yes.
Okay. Wow, okay. And in terms of business also, you were obviously bootstrapping, right, at the beginning, and then you raised some funds and you had grants and so on. How was the journey in terms of fundraising, and how challenging and stressful was it?
Yeah, it was tricky, and it's always a roller coaster ride. Like anytime you start a startup, it's always going to be like a roller coaster ride. And so to give an example, in the summer, we spent the summer of 2017 in Shenzhen, China. And it was me, my wife, who was like 6 months pregnant, our 7 months even, and like our 1.5-year-old son, and like 3 of our employees in like a small like high rise in Shenzhen. And we were rapidly prototyping the electronics in the hand, and that's where we found our motors that we use currently. And then we manufacture everything else in the United States. So we get our motors from there, and then we do all the carbon fiber, all the silicone molding, all the fabric, all the final assembly here in our offices in the lab. But we ran an Indiegogo campaign in 2017, trying to get 150,000, and we only got 7,000, or like 6 to 7,000 from this, right? And we basically at the end of that year had about $200 left in our bank account, right? And that was like a tipping point for the company. Like it's either we get money at this point or like we're done, right? And we had just gotten a grant from the National Science Foundation, and the following week in January of 2018, we now had $200,000 in our account, and that was more money than we had ever had before. And so it was just like this whirlwind roller coaster of like, the company is about to die, and then then we're doing better than we ever had before, right? And it's being able to adapt to those situations, right? To have the grit to like continue on through those situations that really has helped us survive, right? And thrive as a company. And so before we got those grants, we had bootstrapped a lot of it through by getting like, $500 here and there from like the university, and like through the accelerator programs from the University of Illinois as well. And after we got our first grants, then we decided to raise a seed round. And it's interesting because every investor is different, right? They all have different like things that they're looking for. Many of them were like, prosthetics, why would you do that? The market isn't as big as virtual reality, right? But the thing is, I went into this not to make like a huge ton of money. I went into this for social good. I went into this to build these bionic hands so that people can have them. So I was not going to pivot to a virtual reality company just because the market size was bigger. I wanted to make sure that the work I was doing was actually going to have a huge impact on the people who needed it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that's gonna be on YouTube. So if you want, yeah, go ahead. Let's do
All right,
it again.
I'll redo it. So